Hi, everyone. This is Franz of the Franz Experience. I want to thank you all for tuning in. If this is your first time, please go ahead and subscribe at www.thefranzexperience.life, where we believe you were definitely bumped on course. I have here with me the famous Danny Simmons Jr., who is an author, a philanthropist. He's a founder of Run Arts Philly. When I tell you his artwork is amazing, I need a better word to express it. But right now, I want to introduce you to Danny. Danny, thank you so much for joining us here this wonderful day. It's actually warming up out here. It's springtime here in Pennsylvania, for those of you who are viewing us from other countries. So welcome and thank you for joining us. Hi, Danny. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me on so early in the morning.
Those of you who are, it's not early morning in some places in the world.
That's true, but in Philadelphia, it's a little early. I was up anyway, walking my dog and enjoying this. Like you said, the great weather. It looks like it's going to be a marvelous day.
I'm excited about that. We've had a long winter, and people want to get outside and enjoy this beautiful weather right now. So, Danny, you had some really great things that just occurred within the past month, I would say. Your work was honored in the city of Philadelphia. I know you participated yesterday in an event with some youth artists, right? On the 15th, May 15th.
Well, yesterday, there were some youth artists. A woman, actually, she's a teacher for Rush Arts Philly. She teaches our kids, but she organized a great street fair, art street fair in Germantown, Pauline McCall. And there were artists all up and down the streets and musicians and, you know, in the neighborhood of Chestnut Hill on Germantown Avenue. And there were just hundreds of people walking around and enjoying themselves and looking at the art. And there were art in store windows all up and down, like maybe 3 block spans. And then at each end, there were different bands playing and people were all out in the street and walking their dogs and just having a wonderful, so that was a great time yesterday. But also yesterday, we had an opening at Rush Arts Philly of Dara Haskins of her new work. She's a young woman who just graduated from PAFA 2 years ago, and she's having her first solo show at my gallery. So yesterday was a big art day.
Oh, that's amazing. I love art. And I think more people should actually embrace it and not just, technical side or, you have those who, I know there was a big scare, and it still is, where they were removing arts and PE from a lot of the schools. And I think that was the balance to a lot of our geniuses, and it's needed.
Well, that was years ago. Yeah. One of the reasons we started, and Rush Arts Philly is a project or the latest iteration of our foundation, Rush Philanthropic Arts Foundation, that was started by myself and my 2 brothers, Reverend Run and Russell. One of the reasons we started Rush Arts was to address the fact that there was no art in the schools in New York City at the time. And the mayor at the time had cut the budget, and the big part of the budget that they cut was the arts programs. And so cutting the arts has been a traditional way that politicians have looked to address budget problems. Let's take the arts, they ain't necessary. And they slash the arts, and the kids and families actually suffer.
Yeah. It's definitely a way of expression, and I think a part of that is definitely needed. Well, all of that is needed. People need to be able to express themselves, and whether it's through poetry or taking a palette, going for it, or a rap or a song, whichever it is, it's needed. People need to be able to say what's on their minds.
But to even find out what's on their minds, because art really expands children's and everybody's mind. I mean, when you start creating art or start looking at art, it gives you the potential to look at the world in a different way. Right. And so one of the things we're not trying to, when we teach kids at our art classes, excuse me, we're really not trying to teach them to become artists. We're trying to teach them to use their imaginations. And when kids start using their imaginations, they can imagine anything, who they're going to be when they get older, how they relate to the world. So it's really, art really is a test of how you can stretch your imagination to reimagine the world.
Exactly. So Danny, tell us a little bit about how you got started as an artist, if you will.
If you want me to go all the way back to the beginning, my mother was an artist, not professional, of course. She was had a little tabletop easel and would be home painting and doing this, and I would just sit there and watch. And so she started teaching me to paint at a very early age, around 5 or 6. And then I started painting comic book characters because I love comic books then and now. And so as time went on, but on the flip side, my father was a writer. They both had regular jobs. They weren't. So my father would read poetry to me all the time. And at first I emulated to the word. And then one day I was writing my first novel, my first attempt at a novel, and I got writer's block. And I had an art kit and I started painting. And it unlocked, like I said, it unlocked my imagination. I was able to write again. And then I later figured, as I was doing both at the same time, that it was easier to get people to look at stuff than to sit down and read a book. So I started painting more and more and gravitated to painting. And eventually painting became my first mode of expression.
Amazing.
Then throughout the years, I started going to art shows and art galleries and just got into it more. I actually went to school to be a social worker. So I didn't go to art school, but I loved art, and I started hanging out at art galleries and met a bunch of artists and just fell into it in the 80s.
Well, that's a beautiful story. I think that's how a lot of us got started. I've recently been joking around about one of the art shows that I used to watch on Channel 12 with Bob Ross. Do you remember Bob?
Everybody watched Bob Ross.
Everybody. I have a friend who's pretty much, he just says a lot of things. He says, we're going to make happy clouds. Take a little bit of this and we're going to dab here. And yes, we're going to create a little trees, happy trees. Yes. And so the squirrels can ride along the path. And I laughed so hard because everybody loved Bob Ross. He was so calm. There are no mistakes, right? There are no mistakes in what you're creating.
It's like you took something and just floated away with Bob Ross. I could never just get his technique down, though. It's like he just dab, all of a sudden it was a tree. I'm like, that never happened for me.
And he said, it's okay. It's okay. However you have it, it's beautiful. And it's love. So it was, that's been the thing for the past few weeks. That we've been just joking around about, but it's true. And I used to do the paint by numbers. Remember that? And
yes,
that came out quite the way they put it. They said it was
not quite.
But I'm sure there was some colors. I said, well, I don't have that color, so I'm going to put this here, or I ran out of. But it's definitely a fun place to be when you have a pen, or if you have a spatula, or even your hands, just to
finger painting
some paint and go watercolor, or even charcoal, whatever way of, or even collecting cans and cutting them and making them into some form of an expression or something that you stand back like, wow, that's magnificent. And it's innocent. There's I believe, an innocence about it, just to allow your mind to grow. But Danny, I know I have a short period of time with you, and there's a lot of artists. This is part one. We'll have to reconvene, but we have a lot of artists that are contemplating not following through with their dreams in the art world. A lot has happened and changed the way we do things these days with COVID. Everyone has been affected. And, what would you say to these artists who are contemplating giving up on what it is that they enjoy the most. I mean, we get it. We have bills to pay. We have, just our regular day to day. What do you say
Well,
to these artists?
I'm gonna recall a little story. My dad, who worked for the New York City Board of Education, but like I said, was a writer. Um, when I first decided, I started my career as a social worker. When I decided to quit, my father said, "Don't quit your job, just work on the side." And he brought up the example of the great Romare Bearden, who was a social worker at where my father was a social worker, and they were actually a desk apart in the New York City welfare system. And he brought up Bearden. He said, "Well, Bearden worked and worked on his art after work, and he was adamant that I get a pension." I mean, that was a big thing in my father's generation. Get work and get a pension, and you can do whatever you want to. You have safety. I can hear his voice right now. My mother, on the other hand, told me, "Go ahead and quit your job. Nobody will let you starve. Be an artist if that's what you want to be." So I had two opposing voices in my ear in my family. I eventually worked as a social worker for 8 years, and then I quit, largely because Run became Run, and Russell was doing this, and they were all doing their thing, and I was busy getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning going to do social work, and really not seeing any change happen. And I thought that by being an artist, I could at least change me. And it happened. And so for artists that are thinking of giving up, try to find another way. I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody to go be, as my mother said, a starving artist, but I think that you can work and paint and gravitate to the art world. And not everybody has to be a professional artist to enjoy what art brings. Don't give up on being an artist. You might want to give up on being, "I'm going to make my living out of this all the time." But the fact that you're creating artwork is so good for you and the people around you who see it. So, it's not one or the other. It's really not. I know so many artists who have day jobs who have transitioned out of their day jobs because they stuck with their art and their art caught on, and now they're making money out of it. So yeah. Also, nowadays, as you brought up the COVID thing, there are so many outlets for you to show your art. There's so many websites, there's so many Facebook books. I belong to 3 or 4 Facebook groups that show art, and people buy art from that group, and they see your paintings, and then this website and this website and this website that show artists that you no longer have to have your art on the walls in a gallery in order for your career to be successful. So I think people need to explore all the ways that they can get their art out there and get themselves out there and continue to make a living, necessarily at a 9 to 5 job or 10 to 6 or whatever.
Now I found myself, when's the best time for you? When do you find that you're most relaxed with your artwork, or creating, should I say? Would you say so? For me, it was sometimes it could be between 11 p.m. and into the early mornings, where it's so peaceful. And then sometimes you just find yourself painting for hours. So, or drawing or creating. I know sometimes it just comes. When it comes, you just go. You
Well,
wake up
all of
from,
that,
but
I used to paint,
mhm,
and it shifted for me. I used to paint late at night when there was no other, interruptions.
sure.
Now I find myself being most creative when I wake up in the morning, when the day has not cluttered up my brain and I haven't answered a million emails, and I'm not as distracted, or I've been on Facebook for 4 or 5 hours. When I first get up and after I take care of the dog and sit on the back porch a little bit, and get some air, and I come in, like yesterday, I got up at 6, and by 10 I had done another work for Tribes magazine to create a picture of their founder, Steve Cannon, who was a blind poet. And I created this wonderful picture. Just, I woke up with it. Boom. Oh, that's what, because I'm not a portrait painter. And then I got this abstract idea of how to create and represent Steve Cannon. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, I was with it. And by about 11 or 12, I had finished. It was a burst of creativity.
That's just how it happens.
Yep.
Well, I can I can relate, definitely relate to that. And so I'm sure it was a beautiful, beautiful portrait.
One of the things I could do if you, and you can edit this out, I could send you a picture of what it was so you can, show it.
Oh, I would love to see that. Definitely, we could put that up. I'm going to also share with the world your art and information,
Hmm.
and how they can get in contact with you and maybe purchase some of these beautiful pieces that you have.
Okay.
So I want to dive right into some of the deeper questions, right? Some of the
Sure.
whys and things that we do. You know, a lot of the Franz experience is about taking stories, unforeseen circumstances, and using them as fuel and seeing how we can take those unforeseen circumstances, whether or not it's trauma, it could be good things, but those things and how they've bumped us on course, how they've created our passions. We have doctors who've created cures because a family member has suffered an illness. We have people who've decided to become lawyers because they feel that something unjust happened to them and family members. We have passions that have been created based off of some of the pains that people have experienced. And so, my ask to you is, what was that one thing that you feel that has occurred? And it could be good, bad, or indifferent that you believe has bumped you on course and made you who you are today.
All right. I'm going to have to give you two things, if you don't mind.
I don't.
Okay. The first thing, probably, that uh, helped spark my creativity was at the age of 13, I broke my hip, and then at 14, I broke the other hip. And so I had to sit myself down for like almost 2 years or be on crutches. And I couldn't really hang out with my buddies like I like to, although they came by and we were still friends. But one of the things was that's when I started writing poetry a lot at that point. So being home and infirm. But I've been in chronic pain also because the hip thing ended up over the years being 4 different hip replacements and herniated discs in my back. So I've been in chronic pain for most of my life since I was 13. Um, and so creating art is taking me away from that space of pain and puts me in a whole nother space. I mean, so that had something to do with it. The other thing that really, and that's one of the reasons why I created, but one of the other reasons was addiction. Up until the year, from the age of 16 to 37, I got high all the time
Mm.
off of various substances. And I went into recovery 29 years ago. Um, but as I went into recovery, I replaced drugs. I immersed myself fully, deeply in the arts. That's when the galleries was started. That's when the foundation was started. That's when I really started showing my artwork. And so I use art as a replacement for substance abuse.
Mm.
And it has been my salvation, really. Um, to the Russell, I had a brownstone in Brooklyn, and Russell took me out of that brownstone, put me in a loft in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and said, go over there and paint and forget about all that stuff you was doing and build yourself a new life, Danny, because I know you love art and you can do this. And I went over there, and for 2 years, Russell paid my rent, and I started creating. And eventually, my art career, and I created a foundation, and things came from that experience. Poetry, that poetry came out of that, which I created. All of those things came out of me leaving addiction and focusing on the arts. And with that central focus and that little start that Russell gave me, allowed me to expand without worrying. So I've had a unique experience for having Russell and Run as a brother, because Run helped start the foundation with a free concert, Run DMC concert, and we raised $250,000 and started the galleries and the children's programs and all of that. But it was the arts that led me into that, and then support from family.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm glad that you recovered.
Well,
I know there's a lot to that process. There's a lot of pains, and
especially when you're still in chronic pain, and part of the reason that you were using drugs was to dampen that pain. So I was able to get past it though,
yeah,
and art played the largest part of that.
and it does. Well, I'm grateful for your family members and for you because there are instances where people can be there and supportive of a good positive journey and outcome, and we sometimes still don't receive it,
Mhm.
and you find yourself falling back and into some. Now, were there times where you felt like you wanted to kind of fall back into what Danny did before?
Not really. I had a very good friend uh, who, for the first 2 years, and he not had, I still have, although he's now in a nursing home with a stroke,
Mm,
has been for a
sorry.
couple of years. I talk to him every day. He came and picked me up at my house and drove me to AA meetings all the way in Manhattan, from Queens, New York, all the way to Manhattan, because he was a year ahead of me in recovery. And we made it a thing, and we developed a whole network of friends who were recovering, which was essentially as important, almost as important as the art, in finding a community at that time that nurtured and supported not using. So by the time that I finally left going to these meetings about 7 years later, I had such a good foundation. And I also became a drug counselor because of my social work background. For many years, well, that's 5 years, not many. I was a drug counselor. And my anniversary was May 5th, and the guy,
Anniversary, Danny.
my anniversary was May 5th for 29 years of clean and sober. A guy who I got clean has 27 years,
Mm.
and he hits me every year thanking me for being there for him as I thank the people who were being there for me. So my friend Jerry called me up. I didn't even remember my anniversary this year. Danny, you got 29 years this year. And then the day later, Danny, I got 27. And without you keeping it real for me.
Mm.
And so, I mean, I have those kind of reinforcements. And so
Beautiful.
today, I just managed to get past it. I don't know if it was luck, determination, all the other factors that I put in, but I've been able to not look back from those days. And Russell and a few people got together, intervened on me, and sent my ass away to a place in Minnesota called Hazelden, which is one of the best rehabs in the country. And I spent a month there. And then my recovery was so good there that the guy who ran Hazelden also had this recovery place in New York. And so he waited 2 years, sorted out, was cemented, and hired me as a counselor.
Wonderful. Now this organization is called Hazelton. Is that what?
Hazelden,
Hazel?
Hazel, Hazelden.
Hazelton.
It's the one of the world's foremost addiction places. It was started by a woman named Hazel way back in the, and it started out as AA, but it went to expanded to all substance abuse.
Wow. That's a painful yet beautiful story because I'm grateful you shared that with us because there are a lot of people who are struggling with some addictions and they haven't yet come to that realization or haven't had that type of support. And I do have friends who are also recovering and have recovered for years and through substance abuse. And what they've had that's different than a lot of others is compassion and
Mm-hmm.
understanding, humbleness, and just the drive to help someone else get through that because it takes a village and the strength that you have to
Exactly.
muster within yourself to continue that every day when you wake up. It's every
And
process.
it's so important that you have people around you that are in the struggle also, so you can help each other. This is not an addiction is not something that you can easily beat on your own in isolation. Isolation is the worst thing, thinking that, that you can do to block your recovery. Just telling my story now or at any given time helps to cement my recovery. It helps me to remember where I was, many things. They said something, and the other thing is your mind tricking you to think at some point that you can use a substance again in safety. Maybe I could just use one. That never works. And the thing that got me to understand that, some old man from Minnesota, and that's where Hazelden is in Minnesota, got up on stage and was telling his story. And he said, once you're a pickle, you can never go back to being a cucumber. And that just hit me
I
so
like that.
hard. It's like, once you struck out, that's it. That's it. There's no going back. I can get high on the weekends. It just doesn't work.
No, that's a good one. I like that.
I loved it. I kept it all these years, 30 years. Once you're a pickle, you can't go back to being a cucumber.
I'll have to borrow that with your permission.
Have it. It's free.
All
They
right,
gave
I'll
it to
take
me.
that. I will definitely share that, and it does put things in perspective, right?
Yeah, it really did.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So Danny, you talked a little bit about the projects that you're working on. So right now with COVID and the use of online, what projects are you currently working on? If you can just
Oh my
share that
goodness.
with us.
I'm not even sure I can. I just had a mural go up in Philadelphia in
Mm,
the Olney neighborhood over by Einstein Medical Center. And there was just a big mural dedication for that. So that's my second Philadelphia mural. And
congrats.
just right after that, I got a call from the Philadelphia International Airport
Mm,
uh, asking me to do a mural there.
mm,
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. And so that's a big one. This summer, I have two shows coming up. One is in Martha's Vineyard at the Mariposa Museum, and the other one is at the African American Art Museum of Houston. So I'm preparing for both of those shows. But the biggest thing that's happening is, one of the places I had my first shows was a place called the Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning out in Jamaica, Queens. And this is their 50th anniversary. And they've asked me to be the honoree for their anniversary. And also, that went with that was to create a brand new show of about 20 works for one gallery. And they have two galleries. And the other gallery put together a historical show of my works from the beginning to where I'm at in my career now. So there'll be two galleries full of my artwork. And so my painting right now is towards that show, which will start in September, October. But along with that, because I am a poet and I've written many poetry books, and I also have a CD out with Ron Carter called The Brown Beatnik Tomes, they asked me to recreate a stage show with Ron Carter, the great jazz player, and other musicians. And so and other poets. So we're going to do something called Wordsmith of music in their theater. And then finally, they asked me to do a Deaf Poetry reunion. So it's going to be a big whole season of Danny stuff.
Well, this is amazing. I'm glad I got to speak with you now. You're going to be extremely busy. I'd like to follow you on that and just see how
Sure.
everything is going, and just let the people know, let everybody
I've
know.
created 4 new paintings for it already. So I have until September. So I'm buying canvases and painting and this and that and the other. And they're covering the expenses of the materials. And, the work will be for sale. And I'm really happy with the progression of the work from the last show I just had 2 months ago here in Philly. The work has progressed to a new level because I needed it to. I needed to do something new. And I sat around and started thinking, how can I evolve? And when I finally got busy doing new work, it evolved.
Nice. Now, have you thought, Danny, about, having your own Bob Ross experience, the Danny Simmons Jr. show with painting and showing everyone how it's done, or how to, not so much how it's done, but how to open that
Mm.
mind to make those happy clouds, you know? Have you thought about that? And because I know, you know, a lot of things are done online through IoT, and, you know, I found, you know, some people aren't very happy with the use of technology where it is, but there's also some benefits of it. And it's more people that you can reach globally, and show them and help them learn how to express themselves. Have you thought about something like that? Maybe you've done a
Um,
few things already, but
I
not on
have.
that scale.
I wouldn't want to be locked into doing a show on a regular basis. I wouldn't mind doing it here and there, but my schedule is would not allow me to, like, okay, I got to do this once a week or twice a week. Maybe if I filmed it all at one time. It's not something I really thought about. I'm not uncomfortable with Zoom and that at all, as you can see. It's not my particular best form of communication. I like to communicate personally
Same.
better. But you know, I do recognize what a great tool this is and how far it can reach. And so, you know, our art classes, because of COVID, for the kids are Zoom. And so we're getting kids from all over the country in the art classes. And even when we are able to fully go back to everybody being together, and we're getting very close to that according to CDC. I'm not so sure, but anyway, according to CDC, we're close to having people congregate and mingle together. I still want to have the classes virtually. Also, I want each class that we teach in the gallery to also be sent out virtually so we can reach kids everywhere. And as a sidebar, we have about 30 kids right now, and that's probably about our capacity. We send each kid a art kit,
Mm.
so everybody has the same materials to work with. So some kids with less resources don't feel shut out. I don't have this, or I don't have that. All the kids have the same stuff to work with, and our teachers work with that stuff. And so kids are on a level playing field.
So how would one of the youth or children that are interested in this particular program, how would they get involved? Where would they go?
Uh, Naisha can give you all that information. All they got to do is register.
Register.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, there's a registration form. We do 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. And so, I mean, you can get and embed in this video when you edit it how you can register. Naisha has all that information.
Oh,
I can't pull it up in my head right
okay. Perfectly fine. Understandable. So these are some wonderful works that you're doing now. Do you have a favorite painting or poem um, that you've created that you find that you still believe is probably the most powerful piece that you've created?
now. Wow, over 30 years of painting. There are a couple of poems that I read all the time when I do in-person readings.
Mm.
And it's one of a very long poem called the Jigaboo Waltz that was in my first poetry book. That is a go-to poem for me and very expressive. Um, there's also the Brown Beatnik tomes from 2 books ago, and that is the name and is on the CD from Blue Note Records that Ron Carter and I created. So those 2 poems are the ones that come up most prominently when I'm asked to read poetry nowadays.
Mhm.
Um, but I have a new book of poetry coming out called Red, about protests and civil rights and all the things that have been happening in this country. And there should be some great ones coming out of that. And we're going to publish that in tandem. That's going to be published in tandem with the 50th anniversary thing.
Wow. 30 years of painting. Where
About
do
that, yeah.
where do you house all this art?
Most of it's sold. Thank God. I got it.
There you have it. It's in houses all over the world. There we have it.
Most of it.
That's
So I guess if I went through I have an outside storage unit I built in the backyard for some of the stuff, and I have storage in my studio. I would suggest at any given time I have 60 or 70 paintings available still from all. There's some paintings I just won't sell.
Yes.
because they represent a period that I like to keep at least one painting from where you see significant changes in my work. And some of that will be seen at the show, the second show at Jamaica Art Center, I guess the retrospective show. So I have various works from different eras that I can put up. But hopefully, you know, I hate to see work go. Like the other day, this happened, and I should have mentioned this. There was a painting I didn't even remember that a woman in Brooklyn who's a film agent for art sent me a picture of and said, "Oh, The Good Fight with Delroy Lindo, which is a spinoff for The Good Wife, has just licensed this artwork for their TV show." And it took me a minute to remember this painting. I was like, oh, now I got it. I went through my archive, my digital archive, and I found it. I said, oh yeah, I remember this painting, because I thought it was actually another painting entirely. And then I started, what happened to that painting? And then I remembered somebody on Facebook said, oh, I have that painting. I bought that painting from you years ago. So, so yeah, that's another great thing that's going to happen. I'm going to be also in the upcoming season of Insecure. There's going to have, and they've had, this is the third season and the last season of Insecure, that they've had one of my paintings on the show. And now I'm going to be on Delroy Lindo's show, The Good Fight, with my painting in the background somewhere.
That's amazing. So there's a piece behind you. There are many pieces behind you.
None of them are mine. I collect a lot of art from artists. So one is the big one over my head is from a guy named Jacob Jaber. If I get out the way, maybe you can see a couple of other ones a little better. This is Donald Odita. And I'll bring the zoom over. This is Carl Hazelwood. This is a picture of James Baldwin by Dawood Bey. And that's a plate by my cousin, Derek Adams, who is now one of the most sought after artists in the United States and across the world. And Derek ran Rush Arts Gallery for us for 13 years and decided, I want to be an artist. And now Derek's work is, Jay-Z has it, damn near every celebrity has a Derek Adams work now. And I have a couple of his works around the house from different periods. When he first started, he said, Danny, I appreciate running the gallery. And he curated some of the most amazing shows that had all the top Black artists, Kehinde Wiley, Rickleen Thomas, all of those were his contemporaries, and they all showed up at Rush Arts Gallery, my gallery in Chelsea, and got their careers started there with Geshi Mutu. We can go down a long list of artists who got their careers started with Rush Gallery. And this is all because I came into recovery, because there would have not been a Rush Arts Gallery had I continued to use. There probably would not have been a Danny Simmons anymore either.
I see that as a bumped on course moment. That is
a bumped on course moment. I was about to lose my brownstone at the time. I was losing my family. I was at a point, even though I had a master's degree, and I was at the point of selling stuff out of my house, and I just had to go. I had to go away and get clean and be serious about it. And when I left, I wasn't serious. I just, maybe I'll get clean for a couple of months and, get my life back in order. And when that guy said that pickle thing, that's when it hit me. I was done.
Those sometimes one or two words, they just stick with us, and they help us through.
Got me through it.
I actually recently I was mauled by a dog, and I couldn't. Thank you. I had no use of my right dominant arm or hand, and everything was bumped. There was so many things that occurred, of course, but what I did was I had to learn how to write and movement of my arm. And I went to Michael's and I ordered canvases. And as painful as it was, the pain went away because I was in a space of enjoyment, and literally to take those brushes and those strokes across this canvas. And I have the art that I've created. It's more abstract. I'm more abstract.
Mhm.
expressionist myself, but I look back at those things and literally afterwards, so I literally slept for hours because it was a part of physical therapy for me.
Mhm.
Um, but when I look at those paintings, they show me where I was. Even I have a video of me trying to write my name again. And everything about that was, wow, I couldn't write. That's actually how the show came about. I could have a, master's degree. I can write all kinds of PowerPoint presentations. And I believe God said, listen, you can't write. You can't really do anything right now. So use your voice. And so
Right.
that's what I did.
A
And
bump, a bump moment.
one of those bump moments. And
Mhm.
I I can appreciate and I can understand exactly, um, when you say it went away, that that craving, and I knew it took some time, but that pain went away in those brushstrokes.
And it does, and it continues to. I
It
mean,
does.
I've had a knee replacement recently,
Mm,
and I painted all through that, and it really helped with my recovery.
mm.
How's your arm, by the way?
Oh, it's recovered well. I don't know if I can kind of see. I had a hole in my arm. I had 14 stitches and 8 puncture wounds. It was pretty bad. When you're at this stage of the game, you remember running and probably jumping fences earlier in life, when you're in school, like you don't go down that block, there's a dog there, but it was unexpected. It was a friend's dog. I played with this dog and he just snapped, and it was something I'll never forget. But when you're fully into your career and you are just at the point where, you know, you just never thought that you wouldn't have use of one of your limbs,
Mhm.
and a most dominant one, down to not even being able to open up a water bottle or wash your hair, or those small things that mean so much, and we just do on a regular basis and we don't really understand it. But what I did learn about that was, where's that understanding, compassion for those who are completely without using, they don't have the limb, or they have it but it's not in good use. They don't have 100% use, or they're 25% use of it. And how easy is it for things with zippers on it, pockets, like you think of these things and you're like, wow, this is challenging. But this was a moment where I took some of those pain points and I was able to see it and use it as fuel, because I have a greater understanding. It's not that I didn't have compassion before, but when you can empathize and sympathize, but when you've actually gone through it, that just adds to you. And I felt that it gave me more power for myself to say, one, I survived it. Two, I have use of my arm. It's not completely 100%, but what I've done is it just gave me more of a drive to really push bumped on course, which is of course a part of the Franz experience, where I share my story and I reach out and have you share your story. And taking that, I have a strong belief, and I know it's helped so many thus far, to just not give up.
Right.
And to that people say, wow, you've healed quickly. I stayed in the mindset of positivity, prayer, of course, physical therapy. I was pretty fit before the injury. Done Spartan races and things like that. I think that actually helped me, um, while I'm still here. With having strength and the arms and such. But when I listen to you share your story about the recovery and your brother Russell putting you up in the loft and 2 years, and he took care of everything and he says, here, just paint. That is a beautiful story in itself. And I don't know if you've created a book from those 2 years of just paint. And it actually made me, go back to my moments where I just had to sit down. And I felt like God said, you know what, just chill for a minute. Just go sit over there for a second. It was more than a second, but seemed like forever, being so busy all the time and then having to stop and sit within yourself. That was probably the hardest thing to do. But I found peace in a canvas and some paint. And so I want to thank you for sharing these projects that you're about to embrace, and I like the fact that you have others' art behind you, and that you can appreciate that, because some artists, it's just all about their stuff. They don't have anybody else's artwork.
I actually do not have any of my artwork hanging in my house, and I have art everywhere. I found early on that I get most inspiration not from looking at what I've done, but what others have done. So I got art everywhere. Of what? Do you mind taking a little quick? I'll show you something. Just another
I would
wall.
love to. I would love to see. We would love to see.
Look at this wall going down the stairs.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
And then this wall here. And then, let me see if I can turn on some lights. Can you see my living room?
I can see there's a lot of art. Oh, wow.
There is a lot.
And these pieces that you've collected over the years?
Collected over the years, I have a storage room. I've been buying art as loving it and for investment purposes also. Look at this. This is the young woman whose work we have at Rush right now. That's Dara's, one of Dara's pieces. That's just a short tour. But there's art everywhere in my house on all 3 floors. And sorry, let me get back here. On all 3 floors, and none of it's mine. I've combined tribal art and African-American art and art of many others. And comic book stuff. I got a room full of comic book figures and comic books, and I call it the comic book room, and just shelves of different action figures and stuff like that. So I'm a big collector too. And I guess, as my father said, you're going to need a pension. I guess I have a pension.
Oh, I'd say so. Now, that's beautiful. Have you thought about that's a museum within the home, but have you thought about putting it in an actual museum to share? I appreciate you sharing those pieces with me and with us on the Franz experience, but is that something that you thought about? I mean,
I've donated work to various institutions. Last year, I donated some Derek Adams work to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Last year, I also donated 2 really, really great historical pieces to the Schomburg Center in New York City. So I've donated pieces, and I'm developing a plan of what to do with these thousands of pieces of African-American art that I have, what to do after, where they go and how they, and I think one of my great go-to places is the Schomburg, because it is a teaching institution, and I've always worked with the woman there, Tammy Lawson. The Schomburg has several of my works, as does the African-American Smithsonian has some. So I would like to divide it amongst institutions like the African-American Smithsonian, the Schomburg, and other institutions that I've had good relationships with over the years.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Leave some to my grandson, my son, my wife, all those people.
Grandson, how's the grandson?
He's fine. He lives in Mississippi and he's doing great. He's investing in stocks. Oh. And has made his first $2,000.
Very nice.
So he's 10.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, have you gotten a chance to see a lot of your family members since COVID? Things are lifting a little bit, but how is that experience for you?
COVID has been a strange experience. I've interacted, of course, Facebook and telephone calls with a lot of my family members, and we've managed to get a lot of things done. Right at the beginning of COVID, I came back from Bali, where Russell has a yoga center, and he's over there practicing and teaching yoga and being a guru nowadays. But anyway, I've been in touch with him. I had just come back with him, and Andre Harrell was there right before he passed. And so there was that trip. That was the last time I saw Russell in the face. And then Joey, I talked to Reverend Run, all the time, at least once or twice a week, and Russell once or twice a week. And then my cousins in Baltimore, I talk to all the time on Facebook and in person. I mean, verbally, over the phone. But no, there has not been a lot of personal contact. I've had a limited amount of personal contact with good friends here in Philadelphia, artist friends who will stop by masked up, and we, pal around and sit socially distant on a desk. Now we're all doubly vaccinated, so we can hug a little bit and yo, what's up, without worrying about killing each other. So it's getting better. It wasn't as bad a year as it could have been. Not getting out was hard. Going to the art shows and this and that and the other. But there are minor inconvenience compared to some of the suffering that COVID has brought to so many people. I didn't suffer. I got lonely. I got, this, that, and the other, a little bored, but I didn't have the suffering. People they lost jobs, they lost houses, they lost family members. Yes. I didn't lose any of that. And so I'm grateful that I got through COVID pretty much unscathed.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that's how a lot of us looked at it, and that have pretty much come out of this, as you say, unscathed. A lot of loss, a lot of love. I believe people have come back together with this trauma and horrific experiences for many. And I think people started to embrace more of their emotions. I don't know if it's more because they wanted to or because they had to have that sit down moment as well.
Yeah, a lot of people started saying I love you a lot more because they were by themselves.
I love you. I love you.
I love you. Good to see you. I love you. Bye. Zoom soon.
People you didn't speak to for 10 years live down the same block as you. Yeah. All of a sudden, love you. I'll let you know when I get home.
Yep. That's a good one. I'll let you know when I get home safely.
and okay, and thank you, because it is important. You check on your neighbors. You seen him come out recently? I haven't seen anybody spoke to him. I love that though.
Well, it shows that we come together as a community, and that's amazing.
Yes.
We should do that more often, whether there's a crisis or not.
Yes. Hopefully that's been adopted for many.
But human beings revert back to their old ways real quick. They really do. Okay, you good? See you. Don't ring my bell too often no more.
Yeah, you good? I don't even think they wait for a response. You good? Okay, thanks. Talk to you. Peace. But it was, Danny, it was a pleasure to have you here on the show, on the Franz Experience. And
thank you.
Thank you for sharing and expressing that. Sometimes for many, it's a vulnerable space, but it's a beautiful space. And it's something that is a part of you. It's your Picasso, and it's something that no one can ever take away from you. But the beauty is that when you share it with the world, you share it with passion and love, and you're always willing to listen to that person or persons that needs a sponsor, or that needs just someone to have an open listening experience with. And I think if everyone embraced that, you have some people that have really never been through anything. And I think the more that we share this story, and not to be in a sorrowful place, because that's not where we dwell. We don't feel like we're victims, um, we're powerful. And we understand that just like that, we can be here, or we can be gone. We appreciate every day. And I want to thank you for sharing the beautiful art, your story, part of it. I appreciate you. Fast forward, that's some time to kind of really dive in. I'm sure that 2 years in the loft is a lifetime of experience in itself.
Oh yeah.
But I want to thank you, Danny, for joining us here on the Franz Experience. Friends, if you're looking to follow Danny, he is on Instagram. He does put a lot of what he's doing in the community on Instagram.
Well, can I just say something?
Yeah.
I'm not really on Instagram. That's Rush. That's Rush putting my stuff up on Instagram. I never check Instagram.
I think they do that.
I got all kinds of stuff on Facebook. Just look at Danny Simmons on Facebook. That's
Danny
where I
Simmons
live.
on Facebook.
Instagram really is more
The marketing.
my experiences, but it's really more to promote gallery and Rush Arts.
Yeah. So there you have it. Correction, Facebook. So
Yep.
check it out, Danny Simmons.
Old school
On Facebook to see what he's dabbing into and creating. But Danny, we lost you.
I know somebody was.
Oh, okay.
And it's terrible. So.
Oh, that's okay. You're busy creating things. I love those frames, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes. I don't know. They're your designer. It might be.
Oh, just some stuff I saw in the store. These are actually just reading glasses.
They're nice.
But they're cool. They fit.
I like them. I was like, I have to say that before we get off of this segment. Then you put them back. I said, okay, that's my moment to take. I wanted to just say they're nice frames. I like them. So on my end, they actually look like they're lighting up and they're kind of going in and out of the color. Red. It's very artsy. When you see this live, you're gonna be like, wow, okay, wow, it's pretty cool.
I want to thank you for having me on this show. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Danny. This is Franz of the Franz Experience.